Welcome to the year of 1917. The Great War has been raging on for 3 years. The Tsar believed this war would save the Russian Empire. Things couldn't be the opposite. The days of the Empire are ending, with the rise of even worse powers. Today, I'll tell the story of the destruction of the Russian Empire. The story of the Russian Civil War. The situation in 1917 has become unacceptable. A wave of political unrest took over the capital of Petrograd. The population, who is angry from the never-ending war effort, protests for basic rights and the end of the war, and even the end of the monarchy. Even the generals are dissatisfied with the Tsar interferences in command. A new revolution is coming, bigger and more radical. Stability was at the bottom. Losses in the front were absurd. Vast territories such as Poland, half of Ukraine, the Baltics, and Belarus all were lost. In the Caucasus, the Russian army was forced to retreat to the mountains. At least the Turks are contained, but we still lost territory. And then, on April 24, 1917, the Tsar abdicated. The war caused the army to mutiny. Along with popular pressure in the heart of the country, Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate, and a provisional government is in place, with the mission of pulling the nation out of the mud. Meanwhile, the Petrograd Soviet is becoming a dangerous force. This became known as the April Revolution. The fall of the Romanov dynasty is a critical moment in Russian history. But if the new government is unable to deal with the country's problems and the threat from the Soviets, there may be a confrontation within Russia itself. This is the collapse of the Russian autocracy. All around me is treachery, cowardice, and deceit. Prince Lvov was appointed the head of the Provisional Government in a difficult time for the new republic. I hope he can lead the country through this crisis. But despite his attempts, the war against the Central Powers continues, and the new government was too slow to implement reforms. There were small victories at the front, but they were not enough, and George Lvov resigned from his position within a month, and Alexander Kerensky, a prominent figure in the movement, accepted the burden of power, in the impossible task of navigating Russia through war and crisis. Kerensky is the last hope of the republic. At least the winter is gone, and the Germans stopped their attacks. But the provisional government was stuck. Only the desire to overthrow the Tsar was the unifying force for the rebels. After he is gone, they were going to each other's throats. Despite having at least stabilized the front, the situation was still critical. In a dramatic change of events, General Kornilov, the commander-in-chief of the army, is attempting a coup against the provisional government. This stalemate can change the course of the revolution and history. Kerensky made what may have been the worst decision of his life and armed the Bolsheviks. Kornilov's threat was contained, but the problem now is the Bolsheviks themselves. At the front, surprisingly, the army was achieving small victories against the Germans. It seems they are not doing well either. Even the Central Powers are at the verge of collapse. Ludendorff took the power from the Kaiser. The Emperor of Austria-Hungary is dead, and the Ottoman Empire is being invaded from the south. No one is safe from the Great War. The Great War is truly the apocalypse of empires. And then the inevitable happened. The game even almost crashed. The Bolsheviks broke into the Winter Palace. Armed militias from the Petrograd Soviet seized the capital's vital buildings and arrested the politicians. The last building to fall was the Winter Palace itself. Dmitry, we are going to the Winter Palace. This day will be remembered as the day of the Bolshevik coup.
On the 7th of November 1917, communists stormed the Winter Palace, toppling the Russian government and paving the way for the Soviet Union.
This is just the beginning, comrades.
This is only the beginning, Dmitry. Although the Bolshevik coup was a success, not everyone in Russia accepted the new regime, and dozens of different factions succeeded and cut ties with the capital. And worse, we're still at war with Germany. With the army in a complete mess, we are suffering terrible defeats. Peace talks must be a top priority. At this moment, the nation's situation is the worst in decades. The Orthodox Church is now an opposition force. The new government is not recognized. critical peasant support, revolutionary commanders. The Red Guard is made of militias, while the regular army is being demobilized. Industry in chaos, and we are still dealing with the fact that Russia is an agrarian country. Dmitry, we have a lot to do. Starting with the fight against the counter-revolution. Hostilities are officially open with the various rebel factions. The Politburo decided that the most important target is the Don Republic, as it is the largest and strongest, but the army was in a complete disarray, with mass desertions. The decree of armed committees must be made to form a new combat force from scratch. But the German demands for peace were unacceptable, demanding too much territory in the west. This proposal forced the Soviets to abandon the negotiations, but it only made the Germans attack with an even greater force, coming dangerously close to Petrograd. This led to a desperate return to negotiations, and Lenin had to accept the peace proposal. During the negotiations, the army brigades that the Bolsheviks managed to mobilize were able to surround the Don Republic at Rostov. For now, they are contained, and in February 1918, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed, a shameful but necessary peace. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk marks a shameful chapter in Russian history, but it is necessary to save the revolution. Has Russia betrayed the Entente? Damn with the Entente! Paris is on the brink of falling. No one is safe. Mere days after the treaty, news came of the Ludendorff offensive. They went all in and threw everything they had in the final offensive in France. Victory or defeat will be decided in this last attack. In meantime, Lenin was shot. Eita! Yakov Svertov must lead the Bolsheviks for now. And Paris has finally fallen. The German army seems unstoppable. We will see the Kaiser's victory in this video. The French defense seems to have fallen into complete chaos, and its collapse seems imminent. We need to expect the worst. At home, we officially created the Red Army, the force that will defend the revolution, under the command of Comrade Trotsky, and with him, Comrade Stalin. This is the duo of terror. But while we were invading Rostov, a new participant appeared, the Volunteer Army, with this absurd modifier. I don't know why the mod devs put this absurd buff, but we will solve it, just by holding position. And the old Imperial Army was officially demobilized and disbanded. This marks a new phase in our struggle, with the focus of consolidation of power. And I lost my entire army. Nice, very nice. At least the game spawned these new red brigades, with decisions to recruit more. So we can say that we are a new phase of the Russian Revolution. The Russian Civil War has officially begun. While we were dealing with the Volunteer Army in the south, news came from the north. A coalition of countries saw the threat posed by Bolshevism and invaded northern Russia. Warships from several countries landed in Murmansk, opening a new front in the Russian Civil War. Bring them on! The Red Army will destroy them all. Fortunately, we had time to form 24 militia brigades, all of which were sent to contain the invaders. We are in a very delicate moment. The situation cannot get out of control. If it does, we lose. The rebels on the Don have risen again and have occupied Rostov again. That is the focus of most attention at the moment. General Stalin will manage this front as long as necessary. In the meantime, Vladimir Lenin has finally recovered. Comrade Lenin is back. But in April 1918, more alarming news arrived. The Czechoslovak Legion revolt. They have taken over the Trans-Siberian Railway. Now that is war. We have lost all of Siberia. The next weeks were of constant fighting in several directions, trying to contain the rebels until it is possible to attack. Meanwhile, in the west, half of France has been taken. Which is strange because this mod is scripted to make France capitulate the moment Paris falls. So the Great War is not over yet. We still don't know who will win. It was only in October that Stalin managed to break through the Don defensive line and attacked Rostov. And then Kolchak became the supreme leader of Russia, controlling all of Siberia, from the Urals to Vladivostok. At last, we have a worthy enemy, the bad thing. The thing is, the Red Terror. No one is safe from the Bolshevik state. Finally, as the siege of Rostov continues, we learn of the collapse of Austro-Hungary. The Austro-Hungarian Empire had survived 1,000 tribulations for centuries, but the chaos and destruction of the Great War was too much, and the empire broke into pieces. The sun is setting on the rotting corpse of the Habsburg monarchy. And not long after, the news of the armistice of Compiègne arrived. Which is strange, I really thought Germany would win. They were arriving in Brittany, they conquered Normandy, but they still gave up. The Great War which resulted in the deaths of millions of people, was finally over. May the dead rest in peace. The Great War is over, the victory of the Entente. Okay, back to business, more rebellions, great. Good thing I'm a time traveler, and I knew this was coming, so I had a garrison waiting. General Budion's troops quickly retook the rebels' headquarters, and the uprising was contained. And then come the consequences of the Great War, the formation of the Weimar Republic. With Germany's defeat, the Kaiser had to abdicate, and the empire effectively ceased to exist. We are witnessing to the death of the German Empire. Now that the Great War is over, the Germans no longer need their millions of rifles, and they agreed to sell us some of their stockpile. I know we are communists, but this is good business, comrade. Finally, the Don rebels have finally capitulated. That took some trouble. Let's concentrate our efforts in other fronts now. Dmitri, we are going to Crimea. In the west, behold what remains of the once mighty Austro-Hungarian Empire. Several small and weak countries. Anyway, back to the front, after a successful invasion, the Crimea Peninsula has finally been recaptured, and Sevastopol, the most important port in the Black Sea, is once again in Russian hands. Time to focus on the east. Kolchak's troops were almost in Tsarina. We can't let Kolchak get too strong. The following weeks saw heavy fighting and advances on the eastern front. By controlling the largest cities in Russia, the Bolsheviks could muster more troops. The advance was slow, but methodical and continuous. You wanna hear a joke? League of Nations. Another enemy defeated. Finally, the volunteer army has capitulated. I really don't know why the devs gave it a bunch of defensive bonuses, but I have 1,000 hours in Roy 4. I can take down this beast. Another victory for the Bolshevik party. Got точно! The next target is Ukraine. We have to retake this territory because... the French conquest of Syria. French imperialism. The Ottoman Empire is not doing well either. As I was saying, Ukraine's natural resources, industry and population are of paramount importance for us. General Budyonny would attack from Crimea and Stalin will attack from the northern border. The guys won't stand a chance. Dmitri, we are going to Kiev. Just by making the decision, we already have a third of Ukraine for ourselves. They practically have no army, and that was the easiest conquest of the entire war. I don't know how it was in real life, but Kiev fell without a fight. And then this territory appeared, an anarchist faction. We do not accept competition. In the meantime, yeah, the Ottomans are not doing well. Anyway, the conquest of Ukraine was extremely easy. Now all that is left to clean up is this cancer. The anarchists were defeated in a day. And now behold the Ukrainian Soviet Republic. With Ukraine back in our side, we can focus on more fronts. The Caucasus. Several countries have slipped through the cracks of this mess. Dmitri, we are going to the Caucasus. Now that the battles are far from the capital and we are not at risk, we can finally breathe in peace. Oh my god, this war is a mess. We're at war with the Poles now. Wait, are they attacking us? Let's mobilize to contain the Poles. In the meantime, Georgia has capitulated and is back to the Union. But for now, let's stop the Caucasus front and send these troops to Poland. After 2 months of fighting in a costly campaign for both sides, Poland has called for a truce. They are willing to back down and abandon their claims in Ukraine and Belarus. So in this video, I'm trying to be as historical as possible. So I'm going to accept the ceasefire. Okay, enough distractions. The last opposing force is the White Army. Dmitri, we are going to Siberia. Also, back to the attacks in the Caucasus. The next target is Dagestan, which was retaken in a matter of days. The next victim was Azerbaijan, and the important city of Baku. This is the most important port in the Caspian Sea, and Azerbaijan surrendered. And Armenia is the next and final target. They are already involved in this crazy civil war in Turkey, so conquering Armenia will be easy. Meanwhile, on the main front against the White Army, the Battle of Ekaterinburg began. This very important city is a logistics hub for the Trans-Siberian Railway. By conquering this city, we have the gateway to Siberia, but they have a mountaineer division well entrenched in the city. So we did what the Russians always do, encircle the entire city. With no supplies and no way to escape, the city was taken. A very important victory in the Siberian front. Anyway, back to the Caucasus war against Armenia. They made a truce with the Turks in time, but it was too late. The reconquest of Armenia marks the conclusion of the Caucasus Front. We only have one front now, which is the Russian state. It's just you and me, go Jack. By the end of this video, one will stand, the other will fall. You may be wondering, where is Nicholas Romanov all this time? Since the revolution, the Tsar has been exiled in Central Asia under house arrest, but the White Army was approaching and the guards, without any instructions, made a decision. In the middle of the night, Nicholas Romanov and his family were awakened, taken to the basement, and shot to death. In one of the most sinister moments of the Russian Civil War, Tsar Nicholas II, who just a few years earlier was one of the most powerful men in the world, met a brutal end. To be honest, I thought the Russian state would have more troops, but the front was wide and the Red Army was advancing steadily. And while I was conquering Tomsk, news arrived of the March of Rome. Benito Mussolini, along with 30,000 men, marched on the capital city of Italy and took power. This was the birth of a new ideology, a new rival, a new enemy. I don't know exactly what happened, but Kolchak fell and was replaced by this Politcenter. Now in the far reaches of Siberia and reaching China, we are facing the last bastion of resistance against the revolution. And finally, the White Army fell. Only the Cossacks and warlords remain. And in the very end, the last opposition, the Transbaikal, was defeated and annexed. So Vladivostok is here, but the game just won't let me attack. But okay, let's pretend this is the end. The end of the Russian Civil War. The Bolsheviks defeated the White Army. The opposition leaders were arrested and executed, and those who were not are in exile or hiding. There is still resistance, but it's too disorganized to be a threat. Political chaos is still present, with so many rebellions and revolts that happened. But now, after a world war and a civil war that took millions of lives, Russia can finally begin to recover. Victory of the Red Army. Workers of the world, unite! After a decade of constant war, Russia can finally be at peace, and we can focus on reconstruction and building a new Soviet state. Finally, in 1921, the national focus was complete, the establishing of the Soviet Union. Today, the creation of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was proclaimed, and will change the course of history forever. Proletarians of the world, unite! And now the slow process of annexing the other Soviet republics begins. And Vladivostok is still here. Anyway, together with the proclamation of the Union, we also created the Comintern, the international alliance with which we will influence the entire world. And this is where I'm going to end this video. Make no mistake, this is just the beginning, comrade. But what comes next is a story for another video. Thank you very much for watching.